Welcome to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. Today, I want you to picture a very specific moment.
Yeah.
It's a moment, well, most of us have been in, or inevitably will be in at some point.
Yeah, it's unavoidable.
It really is. You walk into a funeral home, the air is always a little too cool, isn't it?
Always.
And the smell is that distinct, that undeniable mix of lilies, floor wax, and maybe some old carpet.
You can picture it just hearing you say that.
You're wearing uncomfortable clothes, maybe a tie that's a bit too tight, or heels that are already pinching. And right there in the entryway, before you even see the family, before you see anything else, there's a podium.
And on that podium, the guest book.
The guest book. It's such a ubiquitous object.
It is, yeah. It feels so standard.
It really does. It
No.
feels like such a tiny administrative detail in the grand scheme of a life, doesn't it? A book, a pen, a list of names. It's just something we expect to be there.
We just assume it will be.
But today, we are going to argue that if you really stop and look at it, if you really unpack what that object represents, it is actually sitting right at this sort of violent intersection of technology, deep-rooted tradition, and the messy, complex way we process grief in the modern world.
It really is. It is fascinating how these seemingly small objects carry such heavy emotional weight when you actually analyze them.
Absolutely.
We often dismiss the guest book as just a logistical necessity, something to check off the list for the funeral director. It's just what you do.
Right, get the flowers, get the book.
Exactly. But when you were the one standing there, making those end-of-life arrangements, deciding between a physical book, a digital platform, or some kind of hybrid of both, that isn't just about preference.
No.
It is a decision about how a life is remembered. It's about who gets to participate in that remembrance.
Exactly. And that is our mission for this deep dive. We aren't just chatting about stationary choices here. We are conducting a full-blown, rigorous cost-benefit analysis of the digital guest book versus the traditional paper registry.
And to guide us, we are basing this whole conversation on a really comprehensive guide. It's titled Digital Guest Books, a Funeral Planning Cost-Benefit Analysis, and it's associated with resources like the Funeral Program site.
So we have some solid research behind this.
Oh, yeah. We've gone through their data, their psychological insights, and their technical breakdowns to really get to the bottom of what is at stake here.
And cost-benefit is the right phrase here, but I suspect we aren't using it the way an accountant would, are we?
No, not really.
We aren't just talking about dollars and cents, though I'm sure that's part of it.
It is part of it, for sure, but no, not entirely. We are talking about emotional cost, the benefit of connection versus the cost of privacy, the benefit of, say, tangibility versus the cost of accessibility.
So it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off economy of grief. Every choice you make in this process buys you something, but it also costs you something else. And it's often something you don't realize you're losing until it's already gone.
Right, because let's be honest about the context here. When you're making this decision, you aren't usually, sitting on a beach with a clear head and a spreadsheet, weighing your options logically.
Oh, not at all. You are under immense pressure.
The decisions are being made quickly, often through a complete fog of emotion.
And let's not forget the financial strain that often comes with these moments.
Absolutely. You're trying to pick a casket, write an obituary, feed relatives who just flew in from out of state, figure out the music, and, oh, by the way, do you want an iPad kiosk or a leather-bound book?
It's overwhelming.
Completely.
And that is the critical context we have to keep in our minds. You have this central tension just tearing at you. On one side, you have the promise of convenience and modernity, the idea that everything should be digital, accessible, and in the cloud.
It feels like the smart choice.
It does. It feels like the future. But on the other side, you have this fear of losing something deeply personal and familiar.
The fear that by digitizing a ritual, we might be, diluting it.
Diluting it, yeah. Or we worry that if we make it too easy, we somehow make it less meaningful.
So we're going to avoid the trap of saying one is better or worse.
Exactly. That's too easy, and frankly, it's not helpful because every family is so different.
Instead, we're going to unpack the tangible and the intangible trade-offs so you can figure out what actually fits your values. But before we get into the QR codes and the leather-bound books, we have to start with the psychology. Why do we even have these books?
It's a great question to start with because if you look at it purely functionally, strictly as a data point, It seems redundant.
It does.
You probably know who came to the funeral, you saw them, you hugged them, you spoke to them.
Right. If I shake your hand at the door and we have a 5-minute conversation about how much my uncle meant to you,
Yeah.
why do I then need you to write your name down 10 feet later? It feels like double-entry bookkeeping.
Exactly. But the source material makes a very, very strong point here. We have to debunk the idea that this is merely a logistical list.
Or an attendance tracker.
Right. It is not about data collection for a mailing list to send thank you cards, even though it can be used for that.
So what is it then, fundamentally?
Fundamentally, it's defined as a record of presence. It is a gesture of support and a symbol of community.
Okay, unpack that. A record of presence.
Think about the act itself. When someone signs their name, they are validating that the life lived mattered. They are putting it on record. They are saying, I am here, I witnessed this, and I am honoring this person.
Huh.
That validation is a fundamental human need during loss. We need to know that the loss is observed by others.
It's almost like a witness testimony. Like saying, this happened and I was here to see it.
Precisely. It's witnessing. Psychologically, grief can feel incredibly isolating.
Yeah.
It can feel like the world has stopped for you, but it's just kept going for everyone else.
Oh, that's so true.
Seeing that book fill up with names is visual proof that your loss is shared. It creates a container for the community's grief so you don't feel like you have to carry it all by yourself.
And here's the part that really struck me in the research. And I think this is the real aha moment for this whole section. There's a specific timeline to grief. And the guest book plays this weirdly specific role in it. The guide points out that the guest book often isn't for the day of the funeral at all.
Wait, explain that. Because you fill it out on the day. The logistical action happens then.
You fill it out on the day, absolutely. But the family, they rarely look at it on the day.
That's probably true, actually.
Think about it. On the day of the service, the family is in a state of shock or adrenaline or a kind of performance mode.
That's very true. You are playing the role of the host in a strange way.
Exactly. You're shaking hands, you're managing logistics, you're worrying if the microphone works, you're making sure grandma has a seat.
Yeah.
You might not even remember who you spoke to.
It's a total blur.
It's a blur. I've heard people say they don't remember anything from the funeral of a loved one. It's just a complete gap in their memory.
That's a trauma response a lot of the time. The brain just records things in fragments.
Exactly. But weeks later, that is when the silence sets in.
The quiet weeks after. That phrase from the source really hit home for me. It's such a descriptive, almost haunting phrase.
It's a heavy phrase because it's so true. The initial rush of flowers and casseroles, it stops. The phone stops ringing every hour. People go back to their jobs, their kids, their own lives.
And that is when grief often deepens, right? Because the world has moved on, but you haven't.
That dissonance is so painful.
It is.
And in that silence, sitting down and reading the names, seeing the concrete evidence in your own hands that people cared, offers a very specific kind of reassurance. It's a lifeline back to that moment when you were surrounded by support.
It's proof that you weren't alone, even if the house feels empty right now. It validates that the support was real.
Yes. So if we were doing a cost-benefit analysis, that has to be the primary metric. Does the format we choose, digital or paper, serve that specific emotional need when the silence gets loud?
That's the real litmus test.
That is the anchor for this whole discussion. Does it provide comfort when the comfort is needed most?
Not is it cool, not is it cheap, but does it comfort?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so with that emotional baseline established, that the goal is comfort during the quiet weeks, let's move to the benefits column for the digital guest book.
Right.
Because we live in a digital world, and the arguments for going digital are pretty compelling, especially when it comes to accessibility.
This is the strongest argument for digital, without a doubt. We have to look at the reality of the dispersed family.
What do you mean by that?
Well, 50 years ago, the sociological model was just different. You were likely born, lived, and died in the same town. Your entire community was probably within a 10-mile radius.
Your neighbors were your friends, your cousins lived down the street, your coworkers were in the same building.
Right, but that is so rarely the case now. We are a migratory society. We move for college, we move for jobs, we retire to warmer climates.
Totally. You've got grandkids in college, 3 states away. You've got siblings who moved across the country for work. You've got friends scattered literally across the globe.
I have friends I haven't seen in person in 5 years, but we talk every day online.
Exactly. So physical attendance at a funeral is often limited by geography or health or even just strict work schedules. If you stick strictly to a paper book at the service, You are effectively saying,
What are you saying?
you're saying, if you cannot be in this room at this specific hour, your presence doesn't count.
Oof. That's a harsh way to put it, but it's kind of true. It gates the ability to mourn behind a physical presence.
It does. It says, if you can't afford the plane ticket or if you can't get the day off work, sorry, you don't get to be part of this record.
But the digital benefit is that it just breaks down those walls. It allows participation from anyone, anywhere. It almost democratizes the grieving process.
And it's not just the immediate family who can't make the flight, right? The source talks about something called the long tail of connections.
I love that concept, the long tail.
What is that exactly?
In economics, it refers to selling small amounts of hard-to-find items to many customers. But here, it refers to the vast network of peripheral connections a person makes over a lifetime.
So unpack that for us. Who is in the long tail?
Think about it. You have the core family, then you have the close friends, but then you have former coworkers from a job 10 years ago.
Childhood friends you haven't seen since high school.
Neighbors from a previous address, the guy you played fantasy football with online for 6 years but never actually met in person.
Right. Or the barista who served him coffee every morning for a decade.
Yeah.
These people might not feel close enough to fly across the country for the funeral.
Or they might feel awkward just showing up if they haven't seen the deceased in a decade. There's a social barrier there.
That whole, should I go, will anyone even recognize me feeling.
Fluffy. Or, quite often, they might not even hear about the service until after it's already over. News travels fast, but not always that fast.
But if there is a digital space,
They can contribute. They can leave a note. They can share a memory. And for the family, this creates a much more complete picture of the deceased.
that's a great point.
Instead of just seeing him as grandpa, you suddenly see him as the guy who helped me fix my tire in 1998, or the mentor who completely changed my career path.
That adds so much texture to a legacy. It steps outside the immediate family bubble.
Yeah.
You start to see the person as they were in the world, not just as they were in your kitchen.
It validates the breadth of their impact. And that transitions us to the second major benefit. The source highlights the actual quality of the message itself.
This is a big one, and it's all about the psychology of writing. Have you ever signed a guest book at a funeral?
Oh, absolutely. And it's stressful. It really is.
It is. You're standing in this long line. There are people behind you waiting. You're holding a purse or an umbrella. You're trying to find a page that isn't already full. You're trying to make sure the pen even works.
It's a high-pressure, low-bandwidth moment. You are rushed. You might be flustered. You don't want to hold up the line. So what do you end up writing?
I usually just scribble my name and maybe, so sorry for your loss.
Exactly. Thinking of you. Deepest condolences. With sympathy. Traditional books often result in just signatures, not stories.
They're lists of names.
They are. It's quantity over quality simply because of the logistics of the line.
But with digital.
The digital advantage here is the flexibility factor. A guest can go home, pour a glass of wine, sit in their favorite chair, and take 20 minutes to write a really thoughtful, nuanced memory.
They can draft it. They can edit it. They can delete the whole thing and start over.
Exactly. Because the guest isn't performing for the line behind them. They are reflecting. They have the time and space to access the memory. And that leads directly to the richness of content.
Right, because digital isn't limited to just text.
No, we're talking photos, maybe even videos.
And photographs are huge.
I cannot overstate this. Often, friends have photos of the deceased that the family has never, ever seen.
That's a fascinating thought. You assume you have all the photos of your dad, but you really don't.
You have the photos of him as dad. You don't have the photos of him as Bob from accounting or crazy Robert from the college fishing trip.
Right.
Candid moments, a blurry photo from an office party, a picture from a high school reunion. When those get uploaded, it's a moment of discovery for the family. They learn new things about their loved one. They see them through other people's eyes.
That sounds incredibly comforting. It turns the guest book from a list of names into a collaborative biography.
That's a beautiful way to put it. A collaborative biography. And there's also the pacing of it. We talked about that silence after the funeral. Digital platforms can actually soften the abruptness of that silence.
How so?
Because the messages trickle in over time. It's not just one day of input. You
Yeah.
might get a notification a week later or a month later. Someone finds the page. Someone finally works up the courage to write something. It's a little reminder that people are still thinking of you. It extends the timeline of support.
And finally, under the digital benefits, there's the promise of permanence. The idea that this is in the cloud.
Right. The idea is that it is accessible indefinitely. You can pull it up on your phone at a holiday dinner. You can share the link with a grandchild who hasn't even been born yet.
There's a lot of comfort in that.
There is. There's comfort in knowing the memories are backed up, redundant, and available anywhere. You don't have to worry about a house fire destroying the only copy.
Okay, so looking at this side of the ledger, the case for digital is incredibly strong. It's accessible to the whole world, the content is richer, it's less rushed, and it supposedly endures forever in the cloud. It seems like a slam dunk.
It does seem that way on the surface.
But, and I feel a big but coming here, we cannot ignore the power of the analog. Let's look at the comfort column for the traditional guest book. Because I think in our rush to be modern, we risk underestimating how important the physical act of writing is.
We absolutely do. There is a reason this tradition has survived for centuries. It's not just inertia. It's not just that we haven't thought of a better way yet. The source describes the act of writing by hand as grounding, and I think that is the perfect word.
Grounding. Unpack that for us. Why does grounding matter when you're grieving?
Think about the physical state of grief. It is disorienting. It feels like the world is spinning off its axis. You feel floaty or numb or hyper anxious. Your body is pumping stress hormones. When you walk into a service, you might feel completely untethered.
Like you don't know what to do with your hands. You just feel awkward in your own body.
Exactly. Walking up to a podium, feeling the weight of the pen, a physical object, seeing the grain of the paper, and physically writing your name, it is a tactile, concrete action.
It's real.
It's real. It requires no explanation. It engages your senses, the scratch of the pen on the paper, the smell of the ink.
It pulls you out of your head and into the room.
It does. It anchors you in the present moment, and it's intuitive. You don't need to scan a QR code. You don't need to create an account. You don't need to remember a password. You just write.
And in high-emotion situations, simplicity is a form of kindness.
That is such a key insight. Simplicity is kindness. When people are grieving, their cognitive load is already maxed out. Guests instinctively know what to do with a book.
There's no friction.
Zero friction. There is no barrier to entry. Even your 90-year-old great-aunt knows how to sign a book. She doesn't need a tutorial from her grandson.
There's also an element of privacy to the paper book, isn't there? We talked about how digital allows the world to see, but sometimes you don't want the world to see.
Yes, and this is a subtle but crucial distinction. Paper feels contained. When you write in a book, it feels like a private moment between you and the family. You aren't broadcasting your grief to the entire internet.
You're not performing for an audience.
Exactly. I see what you mean. On a website, you might look at other comments and think, oh, Susan wrote 3 paragraphs and a beautiful poem. I guess I need to write 4 paragraphs.
Or Bob posted a photo. I need to go find a photo.
It creates a comparison trap. Digital can inadvertently encourage a performative aspect to grief. Look how sad I am. Look how well I knew him. Paper is intimate. It is quiet. It lacks that public visibility that can make some people really self-conscious.
You can just write a messy signature and walk away, and that's perfectly fine.
It feels safer for many people. And we can't talk about the benefits of paper without talking about the simplicity of the setup for the family.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Zero tech. That is the benefit. You buy a book, you buy a pen, you put them on a table. Done.
No Wi-Fi passwords.
No Wi-Fi, no data policies, no subscriptions, no software updates, no crashing servers. It is a single one-time purchase.
And the legacy aspect is immediate.
It's immediate. The moment the service is over, you have a physical keepsake. You can hold it. You can put it on a shelf. You don't have to order a print or download the archive. It just is.
It's interesting. We usually think of instant gratification as a digital thing. Getting the like, getting the comment. But in this specific case, the paper book is the one that is instantly complete.
That's a great way to put it. It is a finished object. It doesn't need to be curated or managed. It captures a moment in time and seals it. It's a snapshot of who was there on that day to hold you up.
So we have these 2 very different value propositions. One is expansive, rich, and accessible. The other is grounding, private, and simple. But now... Now we have to get into the weeds.
Okay.
We have to look at the costs. And I don't just mean dollars and cents, although that's definitely part of it. Let's start with the costs of digital.
The first cost is what the source calls the setup burden. And this is where the convenience of digital can sometimes backfire spectacularly.
Because it's not magic, right? An online guest book doesn't just appear out of thin air. Someone has to set it up.
Exactly. Unlike paper, digital requires administration. First, you have to select a platform, and there are dozens, all with different features and price points. Then you have to configure the settings. Do you want comments to be public or private?
Do you want to moderate them?
Yes. You
Yeah.
have to decide about moderation.
What does that even mean? Like, you have to approve every comment.
Yes. And this is a dark reality we have to mention. If you have a public link, anyone can post. Do you want to risk a spam bot posting an ad for sunglasses on your grandmother's memorial page?
Oh my God.
Or a troll, or even just a well-meaning but confused person posting something really inappropriate, so someone has to watch it. Then you have to generate the QR code, get it printed on the programs, or email the link to everyone you know.
And you're doing all of this, comparing platforms, setting up moderation, dealing with tech support, while you're trying to deal with your own grief.
It demands decision-making power during a period of decision fatigue. We have a limited amount of cognitive bandwidth when we are grieving. Our brains literally function differently.
You're forgetful, you're scattered.
Scattered, numb. Adding technical administration to that load is a real cost. It's labor. It turns the bereaved into a part-time webmaster.
That is a lot to ask of someone who is just trying to get through the week. Then there is the inclusivity paradox. We said earlier that digital is more inclusive because it reaches distant guests. But can it also be exclusionary?
That is the paradox. While you are including the cousin in London, you might be excluding the grandmother sitting in the front row.
Because not everyone is tech savvy.
Not at all. I can imagine an older guest seeing a QR code and just feeling completely lost. Or feeling like they're doing it wrong.
Or feeling like they are being a burden by having to ask someone for help.
Exactly. Imagine an 85-year-old friend of the deceased. They want to sign the book, they see a QR code, they don't have a smartphone, or they don't know how to scan it. They might just walk away.
That breaks my heart. To think of someone wanting to participate and feeling shut out by technology?
The risk is that you discourage participation from a specific demographic, often the demographic that was closest to the deceased, because they are overwhelmed by the interface. If the technology makes someone feel inadequate or confused, that is a high emotional cost.
You never want a guest at a funeral to feel stupid.
Never. That's a really important point. The tool shouldn't make the user feel bad. And then there are the actual financial realities. I feel like a lot of people assume digital is free, or at least cheaper than a nice leather book.
That is a common misconception. The initial look might show a free, basic option. But the reality of the business model is often very different.
Because companies have to make money somehow.
Right. So there are setup fees, there are subscriptions for extended storage. Wait, subscriptions? Like Netflix for a tombstone.
Essentially, yes. If you want that memorial to stay online for more than a year, you might be paying an annual fee. Or a perpetual fee upfront. There can be fees for high-resolution photo uploads. There can be fees to remove ads from the page.
And the double dip. I've heard about this in the wedding industry, but it happens here too.
Oh, the double dip is very real. Many families realize a year later, I don't want this to just be on a website. I want to hold it. I want to put it on the coffee table.
So they pay the platform to print the digital book.
Into a physical keepsake. So they have already paid for the hosting, and now they are paying a premium, often a very high premium, for a printed book they could have just bought in the first place.
So over time, digital can actually be significantly more expensive than the one-time cost of a high-quality paper book.
Correct. A paper book is a sunk cost. You pay it once, you own it forever. Digital can become a subscription to your own memories.
That is a chilling way to put it. A subscription to your own memories. Which leads us directly into what I think is the most critical and perhaps most disturbing part of this deep dive: data privacy.
This is the factor that is most often overlooked in the source material and, frankly, by most families. We are so used to clicking "I agree" on terms of service that we don't stop to think about what we are agreeing to in this context.
It's one thing to give your data to a social media giant for a free email. We sort of accept that bargain. It's another thing entirely when it's the condolences for your mother.
The stakes feel different, don't they? The questions you need to ask are really serious. Who owns this data? When you upload a photo of your father, does the platform now get a license to use that photo in their marketing?
Is the guest book public or private?
Can the messages be downloaded or deleted later? It all comes down to trust.
It does.
Traditional books offer physical control. If you want to burn a page because someone wrote something nasty, you can. If you want to lock the book in a safe, you can. You control who sees it.
But digital?
Digital requires trust in external systems. You are trusting that the company won't sell the email addresses of your grieving guests to third-party advertisers.
Hey, we saw you attended a funeral. Here are some ads for life insurance.
Exactly. That is the nightmare scenario. Or grief counseling ads. You're trusting they won't put banner ads next to your loved one's photo. Some free platforms are ad-supported. Imagine scrolling through heartfelt memories and seeing a pop-up for a car dealership.
That feels like such a violation.
It's a total violation. The source material references guidance from the funeral program site regarding this, and their take is all about protection.
What do these suggest?
They emphasize the protection of family memories. They suggest that before you sign up for any shiny new platform, you really, truly look at the privacy policy. Is this a space where you feel safe being vulnerable?
Because grief is vulnerable.
Supremely vulnerable. If you don't trust the platform, you won't get the authentic emotional release you need. You'll hold back. The whole purpose is defeated.
And connected to trust is the issue of preservation. We mentioned the myth of digital permanence earlier. We tend to think if it's on the internet, it's there forever. But that's not really true, is it?
It is the great lie of the digital age. The internet is forever. It's only true for your mistakes. For your deliberate archives, it's incredibly fragile.
So what's the risk?
Digital longevity depends entirely on platform stability. Companies go out of business, they get acquired, they change their terms of service, they pivot their business models.
I've seen this happen with photo hosting sites. One day they're free, the next day you have 30 days to download all your photos, or they get deleted forever.
Imagine that happening with your father's memorial page. Pay us $50 or we delete these condolences. It happens. Or the file formats change. Or the link just breaks. This is called link rot.
Link rot. That sounds awful.
It is. It's when a hyperlink points to a resource that is permanently unavailable. Contrast that with a paper book. It is subject to wear fire, flood, fading ink, but it will never give you a 404 error.
It will never ask for a credit card renewal.
It will never tell you that handwriting 1.0 is no longer supported. It has a physical persistence that digital just lacks.
So if paper is safe but limited, and digital is expansive but risky, is there a middle ground? The source talks about the hybrid solution.
This is where many families are landing, and it makes a lot of sense. You use both formats to maximize the benefits and mitigate the risks.
How does that work practically? Because that just sounds like double the work.
It's a little more work, I won't lie, but it covers all the bases. You have a paper book at the service. That covers the tactile need, the older guests, and the immediate physical legacy. You get that grounding moment we talked about.
So grandma's happy, and I have something to put on my shelf immediately.
Exactly. But you also set up a digital option for remote friends and that long tail of connections.
And you bridge the gap between the two using the printed materials.
Exactly. You use the printed funeral programs, which, again, resources like the funeral program site are great for to discreetly share the digital link or QR code.
Oh, that's clever.
You just put a small note in the program. For those who wish to share a story or photo online, please visit this website.
That seems like the best of both worlds. The people in the room sign the book. The people at home sign the website.
It is. It offers maximum inclusivity. No one is left out. The person in the room has a book. The person in Paris has a link.
But there's a catch. Right. There's always a catch.
The catch is complexity. You are now managing two systems. You have the cost of the book and the potential cost and setup time of the site. And you have potential duplication.
Meaning some people might sign both.
Right. You get that, I signed the book, do I need to do the web thing too question. You might get the same message twice. But for many, the extra effort is worth it to ensure everyone has a voice.
It balances the depth of the digital with the warmth of the physical.
Perfectly said.
So we've laid out the pros, the cons, the risks, and the hybrid option. We've gone really deep into the weeds here, but now we have to bring it back to the listener who is actually sitting there staring at a checklist, feeling completely overwhelmed. Let's talk about making the decision. How do you actually choose?
We have to acknowledge decision fatigue. I mentioned it before, but it's so important. When you are grieving, adding one more choice can feel like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Even small decisions feel mountainous.
So the first step is to be honest about your own capacity.
Yes. Families need to assess if managing a digital page feels supportive or burdensome. If the idea of setting up a website makes you want to cry, don't do it.
That is the golden rule.
It really is. There is a no-pressure rule here. Digital is optional. Rejecting it isn't failing to modernize. You aren't a Luddite if you just want a book. You aren't living in the past.
And conversely,
Conversely, accepting it isn't rejecting tradition. You aren't disrespecting the solemnity of the event by using a QR code. You aren't cheapening the memory.
It's about fit. It's about what your family can handle and what they actually need.
It is about fit. The source offers a framework of guiding questions that I think are incredibly helpful. These are the questions you should ask yourself at the kitchen table.
Let's run through those. I think these are gold for anyone in this position.
Okay, first, will this make remembrance easier or more stressful? Be honest about your capacity. If you are barely holding it together, maybe simplicity is better. Don't aspire to be the perfect digital host if you can't get out of bed.
Number 2,
Second, does it align with how our guests express sympathy?
know your audience.
Exactly. Are your guests tech-savvy storytellers who live on Instagram? Or are they traditionalists who still write thank you notes? If 90% of your guests are over 80, a digital book might be a ghost town.
Good point. Third,
Are we comfortable with the privacy terms? Do we own the memories? Read the fine print. Don't just click agree.
and
Finally, do the benefits outweigh the financial and emotional costs?
those are such grounding questions. They take the focus off what is trending or what the funeral director is trying to sell you and put it back on what do we need.
And that is the ultimate goal, to move from just checking a box to creating a space for real support. It's not about the book, it's about the people signing the book.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, where do we land?
We land on the idea that there is no correct choice. There is only the choice that aligns with the family's specific values. It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off between privacy and reach, between simplicity and depth. You just have to choose which side of that trade-off you can live with.
I love the phrase intentional remembrance. Whether you choose digital or analog or both, the goal is a meaningful experience. It's not just about capturing names, it's about capturing the impact of a life.
And I would encourage listeners to think about these preferences before they are in a crisis situation. I know it sounds morbid, but looking at resources like the funeral program site now, understanding the options when you aren't under duress can be a huge gift to your future self.
That's a great call to action. Don't wait until the worst day of your life to figure out your philosophy on digital privacy. Have the conversation now. Hey, if something happens to me, do you want a website or a book?
Exactly. It's a form of care. It's a gift you give your family, one less decision they have to make in the fog.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We've talked about the cloud and books and legacy, but here's the provocation. If we rely entirely on digital platforms for our legacy, what happens to our memories if that platform disappears? The trade-off between reach touching as many people as possible and control ensuring those memories are safe and yours, that is the defining question of modern mourning.
It really is. Are we renting our memories or do we own them?
That is something to think about. Thank you for listening to the Funeral Channel Network podcast. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.